All right, first bonus video of the new year. As a lot of people have been doing, I am going to also be taking a look at my top 10 Transformers figures for 2023. It's been a really strong year. I feel like it started off really strong, had a lot of good stuff in the middle, and then also had a lot of good stuff near the end of it. So there's a lot of pretty decent figures that don't even make my honorable mentions this year, just because we had so much that I think was like pretty good quality this year. As a slight note, though technically I did get some figures from Legacy United near the end of 2023, I'm going to be including those on next year's list, just because technically Legacy United is supposed to be the 2024 part of Legacy, so even though some of them kind of beat the street date and got out a little early, they are kind of meant for next year. So we already had so much stuff that I thought was pretty good this year that I figured I should give those figures kind of a fair shot for next year's list. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at specifically figures that came out this year that I have. So I know a lot of people kind of go the route of just like figures that they got this year, which is a totally fine way to do it. But for me, I'm just going to be looking at the things that actually came out this year. So yeah, to get on into it, I'm going to start off with 5 honorable mentions. Not in any exact particular order, but just figures that almost made the list that I thought were pretty good and worth talking about this year. Starting off at the top here, we've got Transformers Buzzworthy Bumblebee Origin Jazz. This is a really decent little figure. Looks great in robot mode, looks great in vehicle mode. I don't I have my qualms conceptually about the faux Earth parts concept that they were doing for these, but can't really knock it. I know that's what a lot of people would have preferred, so it's still a really nice figure. Good articulation, looks good in both modes. Can't really complain. Definitely the smallest figure on this list I'll be taking a look at. My next honorable mention is actually for Legacy Evolution Jolt that came with Hotshot. I just think that he was a real slam dunk in terms of getting a new Minicon, and definitely the best Jolt we've ever had, because he's got heels. He can actually stand, unlike every other version of Jolt that's come out, at least Armada Jolt. But yeah, no, just a really solid little Minicon, and I'm excited to see if they do any more updated Minicons, because this guy turned out really nicely. My next honorable mention is going to be for one of the Junkions, and is going to be for Trashmaster. Trashmaster was just a really solid figure, and I think I had a lot of fun kind of messing around with the sort of combination thing and trying to make the Junkosaurus Rex that they kind of showed off and make a better version of it, and Trashmaster was a big part of that. And I also think that he just looks really cool in his robot mode, looks really cool in his vehicle mode. It's neat to see a garbage truck transform. We don't see a ton of those, and yeah, just an overall really solid toy. My next honorable mention is actually for Javelin that came in the Amazon, I believe it was an Amazon 2-pack with Javelin and Cascade. And that's another thing I should mention here, is that I'm looking at my top 10 figures. So if there were multiple figures that came in the same set, I'm only looking at individuals from those sets. So Javelin, I think, definitely was a big winner for me this year. I mean, it's a mold that we'd seen in previous years. The Studio Series RC mold might have made my honorable mentions last year. I can't totally remember, but I've kind of stopped caring about that figure for the most part. And then when I got Javelin, I'm just like, oh, this mold feels so much better than it did before. And I didn't even have any huge problems with it the first time. And just the color scheme really, really works for me. It's just an overall really neat use of a Studio Series mold to make a Generation style figure. And yeah, just really solid overall. And then my last honorable mention is going to be going to Legacy Evolution Armada Universe Megatron. Definitely a really fun figure, not without issues. I do enjoy him a lot more now that I've done the, I 3D printed out a shoulder upgrade so he could actually rotate his shoulders forward and back. That was the main thing that bugged me about the original figure, which I'm still taking into consideration for this list, because, this was not actually part of the release, and should have been probably. But yeah, no, just a really fun figure. He's pretty solid. Doesn't quite make the list. He's, got a few issues here and there, but still a really solid toy. But now, to get onto the actual list itself, we're going to be starting off with number 10, and number 10 this year is going to have to go to Transformers Studio Series 86 Deluxe Class Brawn. This is a really cool little toy. His robot mode is maybe slightly like boxier and less rounded than I'd like it to be, because if we were really going, you know, animation accurate, Brawn really did have a very like rounded chest. But the vehicle mode is just adorable. it's really charming and fun to roll around, and I think the transformation is fun and neat. He's got pretty decent articulation. Like I said, you know, some boxiness in the robot mode, but honestly, it's grown on me quite a bit. And he does really look like a really solid G1 Brawn, and probably the best one that we've ever gotten. So yeah, that's my number 10 pick for 2023. And then moving on, my next pick, my number 9 pick for this year, is going to be another redo of a G1 Minibot in the deluxe scale, and that's going to be Beachcomber. This guy is awesome. I love that he comes with the little bird. I love that he has the rubber tires. He takes all the things that I really liked about the Power of the Primes mold and just improves upon them by just like upscaling it and giving him a little bit more like detail and getting the colors a little bit closer, because, you know, the Power of the Primes one had that slightly greenish blue, which I didn't really have a problem with at the time, but then comparing him with this one, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is the blue that I want for Beachcomber. He's a really fun little figure. I honestly thought he'd make it a little bit higher on this list, but, you know, there were just a lot of other figures that, you know, kind of took the cake. But he's got, it's hard to describe, maybe it's the rubber tires, I don't know, but he's kind of like just a really nice hand feel to him. Like, you pick him up and you're just like, oh yeah, this feels like a nice solid toy. But yeah, the vehicle mode is maybe not perfect. I don't really like that, you know, the whole weapon plugging on as the front bumper thing, but you know, that's a small nitpick, all things considered. But yeah, no, just a really fantastic figure. So he makes my number 9 slot. And then for my number 8 pick, it's kind of split between 2 figures, because like really they're kind of the same figure, just in different color schemes, and that is going to be Skyquake and Dreadwing. Pick whichever you prefer and put it at the slot in this list. I didn't want to include like multiple figures like as different places on the list that used the same mold. So even though they are different figures, they're pretty similar. They are almost identical in terms of sculpting, aside from the tip of their gun. So I figured that they kind of deserve the same slot on this list. I'd say if I had to pick one over the other, I think I do like Skyquake a little bit better. I'm not totally sure why that is, because I've got more connection to Dreadwing as a character, but I think something about the fact that they chose red instead of yellow for his, like, you know, translucent color here. I just kind of wish they'd done yellow, but really both of them look very good. But I do remember having that sort of initial reaction to Skyquake, since he was the one that came out first. But yeah, he had that slight issue with the backpack thing that needed to be fixed. But after that, he's a really solid figure. He's, you know, still got a couple things here and there, but I think that he was like one of the first figures that really nailed that sort of, you know, mix between G1 and Transformers Prime aesthetic, where he still looks like the character that he's supposed to be, but definitely feels like more of a modern, you know, kind of a Generations style version of him. I also think it's neat how they did the blend between him and the Euro G1 Skyquake. We still haven't seen a version of this mold in those colors. Surely we must be getting that eventually, because he also has like the gimmick where he plugs on with Needle Nose, and that's clearly gotta be because they're gonna reuse Needle Nose as the Predators, right? Because otherwise, what connection do Skyquake, Dreadwing, and G1 Needle Nose have? But yeah, regardless of all that, I love the head sculpt. I love like the look of the shoulder pads. I think it's a pretty fun transformation and a great looking jet for honestly both versions of this mold. So yeah, if you haven't gotten one of these guys, they're really good, and I'm happy to have a good version of these characters. Then next up, taking the number 7 slot, is going to be the last deluxe on this list. And, you know, I talked about the, you know, Skyquake and Dreadwing kind of getting the good blend between their original media and the sort of like G1 stylings, but I think the figure that really did that the best for me this year was Animated Prowl from Legacy Evolution. This is just a figure I didn't know that I wanted necessarily, but it really captures the look of Animated Prowl, but kind of takes out just enough of the like really exaggerated cartoony animated proportions and just leaves it with a nice sort of Generations feeling style. The alt mode is like, there's a few spots where it doesn't peg together quite as well as I'd like it to, but it's still pretty good overall, and the robot mode just looks perfect. Like, this is exactly what I'd want out of like a Generation style version of the animated figures, and even better than I think the ones that are coming out in Legacy United. Like, I think that Optimus Prime looks really good, and the Bumblebee looks good too, but they're just like a little bit too animated for me, whereas this one I think hit the perfect balance of like, okay, they gave him a slightly longer chin than Generation style figures usually have, but otherwise he really does fit in with, you know, like the Generation's proportions, and I think that he really hit the mark. So yeah, he's going to take my number 7 slot. Moving on from number 6, we're pretty much big boys all the way here out. And number 6 is going to be Studio Series 86 Snarl. Yeah, he's great. He's probably my second favorite of the Studio Series Dinobots. Grimlock is a hard one to beat, man. That might be one of my favorite figures of all time, honestly. But Snarl is pretty good too. I definitely think he's a slight upgrade from Slug and Sludge, or Slag and Sludge, whichever. Only issue I really have with him is the hips side to side are a little bit floppy, but that's way better than them being floppy front to back, and he's got nice ratchets in that regard. Most of his joints feel pretty good. I think the Stegosaurus mode looks really nice. He's got kind of a neat, fun transformation, and he just looks really big and beefy in both modes, which is what you want out of your Dinobots. So yeah, he's gonna take my number 6 slot. And then moving on to top 5, baby. These are some strong figures for this year. And at number 5, hard to see him this far down on the list, honestly, but it's going to be Studio Series 86 Commander Class Ultra Magnus. It's kind of incredible that we have 4 figures that I feel like are better than this guy this year, because this is a really, really solid release. The only thing that I don't like about him is how far the shoulders stick out, and even that you kind of get used to it after seeing him in person. I like the whole gimmick with being able to open up the chest like that. That's really fun, and it's not like super obtrusive. It's pretty ignorable if you don't want to interact with it at all. I think that the car carrier mode looks great. He does have kind of like a long transformation, like it's definitely involved, but it's all fairly intuitive steps, and it's kind of a fun process, so I do appreciate that. He's got all really solid joints, like you can shake him around and he's not really moving around a whole lot, unlike, you know, Snarl's kind of floppy hips there. But yeah, no, he's just a really solid figure, and it feels like we finally have nailed the kind of G1 Ultra Magnus aesthetic. And personally, I'm kind of on the camp of I prefer it without the white Optimus Prime, because he never had that in the cartoon. I get why some people want it to be more toy accurate, but Studio Series really all is about, you know, the cartoon accuracy, and he didn't do that in the cartoon. So I'm glad that that they went that route, because it feels nice to just have him transform straight out of the car carrier into this mode. But yeah, no, really, really solid figure, but not the top one on my list. We got a few more that I think he did even better than he did. Moving on to number 4 on my list, it's going to have to go to the other Commander class this year, which was Legacy Evolution Armada Universe Optimus Prime. This guy just turned out really, really fantastic. I love the individual robot mode, I love the vehicle mode, and I love the combined mode. The base mode is meh, but if you're gonna have to sacrifice one of the modes to like make the legs actually be able to, like, you know, be legs unlike the original toy, that was definitely the mode to sacrifice, because even the original one was like kind of nothing in terms of a base mode. Like, it had some neat vibes, but it wasn't that great. So it's fine that the base mode isn't as good as the original, but the rest, every other mode is better than the original, which I appreciate. But yeah, no, just good articulation, a fun transformation scheme that it's like, it's kind of fun to go between the different modes, pretty playable, and yeah, just an overall really, really solid figure, and goes super nicely. Even though he didn't make the list fully, he goes super nicely with that Armada Universe Megatron too. I love having the two of them together on my shelf. And then number 3 on the list, you knew that this was going to show up on the list somewhere, but again, still, you know, just like last year's list, didn't quite make it to number 1, but number 3 this year for me is going to be our HasLab item with HasLab Deathsaurus. Really, really, really solid. I love this set. It's kind of a shame still that this had to be done at basically a Titan class price point rather than, you know, it being able to be a mainline Commander class, but considering what we got, you know, it comes with all this different stuff, and it's all stuff that I actually like too, which is not, you know, always true of the figures that cost more than I'd like them to, that just come with extra stuff to compensate. But yeah, I definitely think that this is the most solid HasLab that we've gotten, and I don't think that I'm the only one who has that opinion. You know, Starsaber was a great figure that made my list last year, and the whole set as a whole is pretty good as well, but Deathsaurus just has like a amount of solidity that Victory Saber and Unicron didn't have. I mean, I really like both of those figures, but just not compared to Deathsaurus. Deathsaurus just did really fantastically. That gold chrome on the chest just turned out fantastically. I love that he actually does the chest force or breast force gimmick, and both of them actually, you know, work fairly well. The chair turned out really nicely. I think that it's a really nice display option to have him sitting on the throne, since that is how he spent a majority of Victory. It was just sitting in a chair. Can't wait till we are able to get some other baddies from Transformers Victory to actually have him displayed with. But yeah, just an overall really, really fantastic release, and hope you got one, because he's not going to be easy to get now. But yeah, still got a couple figures that made it a little bit higher than he did this year. And moving on to number 2, we are going back way to the beginning of the year. I mean, you probably can figure what number 1 is going to be too, because some of the first figures that I got this year actually turned out to be the best, which is not to say that the year just went downhill, because like I've shown off, we've had a lot of really good figures this year, but we just started off really strong as well. And number 2 is going to have to be, he's kind of teetered for a while, but I think number 2 is going to have to be Leo Prime or Lio Convoy. This figure just turned out really fantastically. There really wasn't, in my opinion, like a great offering for Lio Convoy previously that like really felt like it fit into scale and didn't have, you know, kind of like old toy issues. So it's really nice to actually get a nice Generations version of him, and it's really cool that we're doing like Japanese Beast Wars characters, because some of those characters, like, they're hard to get if you don't live in Japan, and not all of them are worth getting necessarily. So it's great to see that they're actually, you know, going into that territory, and in the main line as well, showing that we can do Japanese characters in the main line and have them still be popular. But yeah, no, he's a really great figure. I think that the lion mode looks great. I know a lot of people don't really like the lion face. Personally, I've always been a huge fan of the make it look more like a realistic animal than the cartoon proportions of the Beast Wars shows thing. They did that all throughout Kingdom. This is just consistent with that. You know, like Scorponok, Kingdom Scorponok doesn't have his goofy googly eyes. He looks more like a real scorpion. That's better. I like that. They're new versions of these characters rather than being like one-to-one screen adaptations, and I think that turned out really nicely. He did have that slight issue where the legs didn't collapse fully in lion mode, so there was kind of like a weird gap on the back legs, which was pretty easy to fix with like just, you know, carving away some of that nub on the joint there so it could actually collapse fully. Not sure why that was an issue, but whatever. Wasn't too difficult to fix. But yeah, no, looks great in robot mode. I love that he's got the, you know, the Energon Matrix or whatever it's supposed to be in his chest. Looks good in alt mode and has a fairly decent transformation. There's, you know, getting the back unplugged when going into robot mode is a little bit annoying, but still fairly intuitive, and I really like him. But as much as I love Lio Convoy, his wave mate also was very, very good this year. And again, it's pretty incredible that my top figure of the year is also the first figure that I got this year. I mean, I got him at the same time as a few other figures, but I don't think I'm going to be surprising anybody by saying that the top figure for me for 2023 is Legacy Evolution Tarn. What a great toy. He's got like the shoulder thing is a little bit annoying, but the alt mode looks great. The robot mode looks great. Also, shout out to Bludgeon. Bludgeon is also great and has a good use of this mold as well. I was a little bit disappointed when I saw that Bludgeon was going to be a retool of this figure rather than his own mold, but it works really well. But like I said, I'm only trying to include, you know, one figure per mold on the list here, and Tarn is definitely what this mold was made for. It just really pops. It looks like he walked straight off of the comic book page, which I really appreciate. The head sculpt, the Decepticon badge looks great. All the painted detail, picking out the different sections on the legs look great. The double fusion cannon looks great. It would have been nice if the tank mode had like actual little rolly wheels, and I'm not a huge fan of how there's like the slight bit of cheating on the shoulders there, because the treads have to, like, you know, make room for the arms in vehicle mode. But at least that kind of falls into the same category for me as like when they do like the half wheels where only, you know, the top section of the wheel actually rotates, where it's like the part still ends up in the right place. It just needed to accommodate it because it's a small figure. So like in theory, in canon, he could still transform that way and his arms could just collapse a little bit more than would be possible with this amount of plastic. So it's totally fine for me. I know that wouldn't even be an issue for most people, but yeah, no, he's a really, really great figure. Fantastic articulation with like the knee joints that can go like way down like that. He does the great thing with the, I mean, it's not exclusive to him, but you know, the hip skirts kind of sinking into the legs. I think that's a great, you know, piece of modern articulation. I like that his hands can open and close, even though that's not totally necessary in a Voyager scale. But yeah, no, really just a really, really fantastic figure. And yeah, I'm glad we have him. I hope we are sometime able to get new versions of the other DJD members, which is a little bit less plausible, I think, because they're a little bit too obscure. They'd have to probably be remolds of other things, and probably most of them couldn't turn into their like torture device alternate modes and be sold at mass retail. So there'd have to be like, I think they could probably do Kaon in a way where like there was like a Mastermind Creations, I think, did a version of Kaon where like he had like a scorpion mode as well, but you could still make the chair mode. And it was like they could do something like that where it's like, oh, he, you know, like the shockwave problem, right? Like, oh, he's a spaceship, but if you turn him upside down, he's definitely a laser pistol, right? Whereas like they could probably do something like that for Kaon, but the other ones are like, I don't know, to make them properly scaled, a couple of those guys would have to be humongous, and like maybe they could do Voss as like a core class. I think that would be pretty cool, but who knows if they're ever going to get around to it. But either way, if there was only ever one we were going to get, I'm glad it was Tarn, because he's really the most iconic member of the team. And yeah, it's great to see that he actually turned out as a fantastic figure. But yeah, that's my number one pick for 2023. And yeah, that's my list for this year. Again, a lot of really, really good figures this year. And you know, even then is like, the figures from United that I've gotten so far are all pretty good so far as well. I don't know if any of them would have made my list. Maybe Chase could have gotten into like honorable mentions or something like that, but yeah, I figured I'd give them their fair shot for next year, because they're all pretty good so far. You know, I've got my little nitpicks here and there, but it's great to see that the way that Legacy United is going, and I'm excited about a lot of the things that are coming next year, like you know, the new Silverbolt. I should be getting Tigerhawk pretty soon. That's shipping out pretty soon. I've gotten a few notices from Hasbro. I'm excited about that Titan class tidal wave. Magmatron, I still am baffled with the fact that we're getting a Commander class Magmatron. That's just so exciting to me, and I can't wait for that figure. But yeah, a lot of other stuff that's showing up on the like leaked listings too that we haven't even seen yet. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the you know, the current state of the Transformers toy brand, and hope we get a lot of great stuff next year. But yeah, that's gonna be it for my list. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I usually do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, with the, you know, occasional bonus Saturday video like this one. Make sure to check me out on my Instagram account, where I post various toy-related things. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have my top 10 list, or top 15 with honorable mentions, for Transformers figures for 2023.